carry a 45. The way I figured, if I gotta shoot somebody, I'm gonna knock them down. I don't want them getting back up. Hey guys, welcome back. Jerry once again up here at Hilltop Firearms Training Center, Dover, Tennessee. Thanks for watching. The age-old debate, which caliber is the best? Which caliber should you carry in your handgun? Is it 9mm? Is it 45? Is it 40? What is it? What is the one that has the most ultimate stopping power? That is what today's video is going to be about. This is actually the result of a conversation I had with a recent student, who had come up here and attended an 8-hour class with his carry gun. He attended what we call our danger close pistol, very gritty class, close quarter retention shooting, shooting from vehicles, shooting in and out of vehicles. And he attended it with a 44 Magnum model 629 Smith & Wesson. A couple hundred rounds into it, the concussion, the muzzle blast, it was an eye-opener. I told him that the course was originally designed for people who carried semi-automatics, but that I would work with him and he could take the class with this revolver. And that is basically what this entire video is about. After that, spending 8 hours with him, standing next to a 44 Magnum, I really thought about that. I started reminiscing back to when I personally became extremely interested in learning everything I could about handguns and handgun calibers. The year was 1984, so I go way back. I was a teenager at the time. Got my first handgun. My dad actually bought it for me, 9mm. But when I started looking back over the years, I have been basically for 30 years have been listening to the great handgun caliber debate, which is better. Now, before social media, before the internet, before all of these experts that we have nowadays in the shooting, training, whatever industry you want to call it, community, whatever you want to call it, we had books and we had a handful of reputable people that were known experts in the field. Looking back, I recall one person that stood out to me was Bill Jordan. Bill Jordan was an old Border Patrol guy, armed with revolvers. Elmer Keith, extremely knowledgeable when it came to the Magnum class cartridges of the time. Jeff Cooper, of course. And this video is by no means singling out one cartridge from the next. And I joke about the 45 because the 45 guys are kind of a certain group of people that feel like, the 45 is the best, most effective stopping round. Well, stopping power. Let's talk about stopping power. Is there even such a thing? Now, in 1992, Evan Marshall and Ed Sano wrote a book, and it was called Handgun Stopping Power. They supposedly had put a lot of time and research into the various calibers, and they talked a lot about incapacitation time. Like if you shot someone with a 38 versus a 357 and a 45 ACP versus whatever. Well, that book had a lot of success, so much that they wrote another book in '96 called Street Stoppers. And it basically expanded on all this data that they supposedly had been gathering through their research. That very research has often been sort of debated as to whether or not it was even accurate. So I wanted to talk with you guys about some things. Now, let's go back to the 60s and 70s. What did most people carry? Revolvers. 38 Special had been around forever. The 357 Magnum, developed in 1934, been around forever, very proven, a lot of energy, a lot of speed, a lot of foot-pounds. But we flash forward into the 1980s, and semi-automatics were taking more of a hold with people. During the 80s, you had what was called the Wonder Nines. The Wonder Nines were pistols that held upwards of 15 rounds. So if you had a 1911 guy that had, say, 7+1 or 8+1, all of a sudden now you have 16 rounds in a handgun. Let me go break these dogs up. I'll be right back. Sorry, 5 Chihuahuas, and you're getting a little ornery. So where were we? 1980s, right? You started having people, law enforcement, the FBI started carrying various Smith & Wesson pistols. That was very popular. And then what do we have? The 1986 infamous FBI shootout between the two bank robbers, Platt and Maddox. Now this shootout has been analyzed and studied and critiqued, and a lot of really bad things happened that day with those FBI guys. We had 8 FBI agents, and they got into a gun battle with these two guys. One of the bank robbers was shot up to 12 times, and he continued to wound and shoot back at the FBI agents. Now, 3 of the agents had the Smith & Wesson 9mm. The rest of the guys were armed with revolvers. There was a shotgun used too, and it actually ended the fight. Following that horrible ordeal, the FBI felt that their agents were not armed with powerful enough handguns, because when they studied what had happened, they thought, well, these agents were making effective hits, and yet these guys were not dropping to the ground. They were not stopping. A lot of people thought, well, the two bank robbers had to have been on some type of a stimulant, narcotic, something. No, the toxicology reports came back negative. They were not on anything. They just simply were very, very strong-willed people that were extremely dangerous. So, some people would have said, well, what do we need to do? Well, the FBI went to Smith & Wesson, and they said, we need to give our agents something better to be better equipped on the streets. We need something. What do you have? And the Smith & Wesson, the designers said, well, there's a new round out there that is making a lot of heads turn, and it is the 10mm. 10mm was developed technically around 1982. It was a joint effort with several people involved, namely Jeff Cooper. The 10mm was a 40 caliber projectile, and you were looking at upwards of 1,200 feet per second with a high amount of foot-pounds per square inch. So the FBI said, yep, this is what we need. This is the thing. You're going to shoot a bad guy that needs to be shot, and you're going to drop him in his tracks. Once again, not knocking 10mm, because I'll tell you a little story about that in a minute. But now we have the problem with the FBI's 1076 Smith & Wesson. They were breaking the guns. Back then, the metal and the engineering that went into the guns just did not account for the abuse of recoil and the snap. So you had a lot of guns that were breaking. Not to mention the FBI agents themselves that had difficulties shooting the guns effectively and accurately, mainly their follow-up shots. First round might be good, but that second round would just push them back, because the 10mm truly was a Magnum class cartridge. The 10mm has gained popularity again. There's a lot of people offering 10mm in their handguns. Back then, you did not have a lot. You had the first handgun back then was the Bren 10. Then you had the Colt Delta Elite, and then other companies started jumping on the bandwagon. Once again, the FBI thought, well, this is too much. We need to tone it down. Long story short, they went to the FBI 10mm light load, which was not successful. Finally, they went to the 40 caliber Smith & Wesson, which was developed in 1990. So the articles in the 80s went from 9mm versus 45 ACP to 9mm versus 40 versus 45 ACP, and the debate continued for another 2 decades. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but when you really think about stopping power or knockdown power, it does not have really any basis for what you should choose to carry. And what I mean is, if I give you, say, a .357 Magnum revolver, but you can hardly shoot it, then what good is all that kinetic energy if you're not effective with it? Now, the 45 guys, they have long been a culture of people that, they like their 1911s and they like that 45, or they like a 45 caliber Glock, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And people claim that the 45 has been effective in combat. Yes, used for 75 years in the U.S. Army because it replaced the .38 revolver, which did not cause enough damage to people being shot. And then in 1985, what did we choose? We chose a 9mm. Well, it holds 15 in the magazine. Do you see where the circle is going? Flash forward, we had the .357 SIG round, which was a phenomenal, but a hot, high-pressure, super fast bullet. Our own Tennessee Highway Patrol here carries it. The Texas Rangers have a choice. They can carry that in a SIG Sauer, or they can carry a 1911. Our very own FBI, what are they carrying? 9mm. The New York Police Department, what do they carry? 9mm. Okay, 40 caliber had quite the life from 1990 up until just a few years ago. But if you do your research, the 40 caliber proved not to be all what it originally thought it was going to be. People thought this is finally around for law enforcement. It's got all the power you want and it's got high capacity. You also get a lot of recoil. Now, I'm not trying to start fights with you 40 guys, so calm down. I bought into the caliber, the whole fad. In 1986, I carried a 41 AE. It was first, I had it, it was chambered in it was an FIE TZ75. In 1990, I purchased my Jericho 941 because I thought this was going to be it. 170 grain jacketed hollow point, about 1,200 feet per second, roughly the ballistics of a .357 Magnum, but in a high capacity pistol. I couldn't afford to buy the ammo. I couldn't find it half the time, much less train with it. See where I'm going here. In 1990, I think it was 92, give or take, 93, carried a 10mm. Back in the day, I carried a 4506 Smith & Wesson. Once again, I could not afford to buy bulk quantities of ammo and get good. So when I really started going to shooting schools in the early 1990s, I immediately went back to 9mm. And for you that say, well, you know, but the 9mm is not potent, I will tell you this, and I can say this with authority because I did the job. I was law enforcement for 3 different departments, and I saw several people shot, and everyone seems to react different. I saw a guy that died from a 22 caliber shot. I saw a guy laying in the, basically in the projects with a 22 caliber hole in him, EMS there working on him, and he is dying in front of us. And yet, I went to a shooting where a person had been shot in the throat with a 45 ACP and was fairly coherent. She had a towel sort of wrapped around her neck and was not having a great day, but the 45 didn't knock her down either. People respond to gunshot wounds extremely different. You may have 2 males, 185 pounds, both of them in really top physical shape, good health, shoot one in the chest with a 380 and one with a 22, and one may fall out and the other one may take that gun away from you and beat you to death with it. All I can tell you is if you cannot effectively shoot, afford to train with, and carry a certain caliber gun, then what good is it? Primarily nowadays, you see we have made a full circle and everyone once again is shooting 9mm pistols. That is sort of where we have sort of gone back to. Is the .357 Magnum effective? Yes, but you also do what? You compromise capacity. 6 or 5 shots may or may not be enough for you in a particular violent situation. That is what this video is about. What good is the .44 Magnum if you can hardly control the thing? Now, the gentleman that actually took the class, he pretty much ran that gun like a champ. I said that, but is that really a realistic, viable cartridge? In my opinion, no. It has its place. Backcountry, camping, hiking in the mountains, in places where people wear thick winter clothing. it may have more of a purpose there. But for the daily, everyday person that carries a firearm for personal protection, 44 Magnum, seriously, 45 ACP, if you can run it, and you can afford to train with it, go with it. Here's one last thing I'll just end this with. Our Tennessee Highway Patrol issues the 357 SIG Glocks. They give their troopers the full size and the subcompact. Well, the last time I checked, on a good day, about 50 rounds of practice ammunition is about $35 a box, opposed to $9 or $10 for 9mm. So say if you want to go out on your day off and shoot, say 100 rounds, which is not really much shooting if you think about it, you're spending over $70. Can you afford to train with that? Now, is the 357 SIG a good round? It is. It's very fast, punches through vehicles, punches through people. Goes, in my opinion, it's a little bit too fast, but once again, you have to decide. Don't let people tell you, well, this is what you need to carry. Because I will say this, ammunition manufacturers today use marketing to their advantage. When you are in a sporting goods store and you're looking at that wall of ammunition, the ones with the cool names and the cool logo are the ones that catch your eye. And I'm not going to say anything bad about these following rounds, but I fell into this myself. In the 1990s, I carried Winchester Black Talons. Remington Golden Saber. Amazing round. What do you have today? You have the ARX and the RIP rounds and the Hornady Critical Defense and Critical Duty and Guard Dog. You've got all of these really cool logos and catchy names, but it is more marketed to sell a product. Think about that. If you will, guys, let's post your comments below. Let's try to keep it professional, please. Tell me what you carry, what caliber you carry, what weight, grain bullet, all that good stuff. Post it in the comments below. I do appreciate you for watching. As always, I'll see you on the range.